Hi, my name is Laird. I've been here and doing LabVIEW stuff for quite a while. I've worked in a bunch of different industries and developed code for a lot of different test systems. That's my primary, bread and butter. I have presented on Aloha before. If you guys haven't heard of the Aloha architecture, you'll hear about it soon. This presentation is going to be about sort of the advantages of why you might want to stick with an architecture and what kinds of things you can do if you decide to stick with one architecture. So one of the things I'm curious about is how many people out there actually make a new architecture for every project that they want to do from scratch every time. Anybody? Yeah, I don't think so. So it's pretty common for people to have a couple of architectures, maybe three. And I have three architectures that I typically use, but one that I lean on the most, which is called Aloha. And what I'm trying to do with this presentation is give some information that's useful in any architecture which uses case structures to capture your messaging. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Typically, it's always done with queues. It might be strings, it might be a custom data type, it might be an enum, but in the end, this will work if you're using any of those kinds of frameworks. Now, let's see, where do I got next? So I've been using this framework for quite a while, and one of the things that I started thinking about is what can I do with this to have it do the things that I really don't like to do or that I feel are taking a lot of my time away from coding. And turns out the documentation is one of those things that I feel takes a lot of time away from my coding. And so I started thinking about how I can have my framework create as much documentation for me as possible. So as long as, like I said, as long as your framework is using case structures, it should work. Pretty much all of them are going to be this producer consumer or a variation thereof. And there's a ton of frameworks out there. I don't know what the answer to that first question is, but I'll bet you it's in the hundreds, if not larger. But all the frameworks are basically trying to do the same thing. They want to control the loading and unloading of modules. They want to do error handling in some sort of a cohesive single place. You want to manage all of your logging, and a lot of times you want to manage all of your messages. You want to have some common messaging that goes between all of your different modules. So we're going to go over what I've done, starting with the default producer consumer that gets shipped with LabVIEW. So before I move on, do we have any questions? I think so. Okay. Let's see what I got next. What's this? Yeah. Okay. This is basically what we're going to do for, I don't know, the next 10 minutes. If anybody doesn't remember what the producer consumer template looks like, we're going to see it in a minute. I'm going to show you how you can automatically get the messages from a case structure. And yes, I figured out that it does work just fine if you use a type-def enum. I'll show you an example of that. And then we're getting into automatically getting the help, which in this case is going to be the top comment within the case structure for your message, because everybody puts a comment in their case structure, right? Just to document. Yeah, of course everybody does that. Well, if you use those little bars at the top of your case structure, that'll work too. Can't remember what those are called. But essentially, this only works if you actually document your code. And in this case, it's trying to work with the way people usually document. And by that, I mean, you'll have lots of comments, but typically the one closest to the top center of your case structure is the one that is describing what the case does. So that's what this uses to try and find the help for that case. And then I'm going to show you how to move all that stuff out of the case structures and into your framework. And so let's just go do a demo. I need to figure out how to minimize this. How do I stop this? What does that do? Let's do end show. Excellent. All right. Find Starry Night picture. Let's see. I think I'm going to start with LabVIEW's default. Wait for it to start up. So the producer consumer string, which they're calling data, that ships with LabVIEW, pretty bare bones. And let's see, I think we can get that with new data. And it looks like this. I'm showing this first because I've developed these examples based on this. And I want to show you how little it really takes to actually make this work. You're creating queue, destroying it on the other side, dequeuing an element. In this case, the element comes out and the error or no error is what determines where it's going to run code to handle that message. Pretty straightforward. I think everybody remembers what that looks like now. So I bring up this guy. This will look very similar. Again, this is just based on their template, but I added a couple of buttons to push specific messages in there. And as in any framework, you'll usually have a dequeuer of some kind. And that dequeuer this time does not use the error to run the case. It uses the actual message. The only messages that I have here are getting messages and getting help. So it looks just like that. We've got these messages here and it finds them. And if we ask for help on them, it tells us what messages we have, because right now you haven't told it what you want help on. We'll get to that in a minute. So the key pieces of this is being able to find out where your messages are, or rather training LabVIEW to be able to find it. And then this get help, which is actually getting the comments out of those cases. In this case, it's going to find this top comment in each of these case structures. And it's not going to find default because it's not really a message. And none of these really do much other than these three. So let's go with get messages. This guy, when you drop it down, it's going to automatically default to the calling VI. Change that to whatever you like. And this is using VI scripting to go through and find your dequeuer. In this case, we have a dequeuer that has 12 terminals. This is finding them. And it's looking on the 12th terminal to see whether any of its wires go off to a case structure. Once it gets there, it's going to take the frame names, the names of all the case structures, and return that along with the reference to that case structure. So this is how we're training LabVIEW to find that dequeuer. Follows the dequeuer to the case structure, and normally I'd have other stuff here next to the frame names to test, to like make sure that this actually looks like my messages. But for this example, I'm just taking it as it is, and I know that it's finding the correct one. Then when we go to get help, the help is using that same get listening messages, and it's using the case structure reference. And it's going to dig into those cases. It's going to ignore the default case because it's not really a message. And it's going to get all of the objects. The subdiagram labels are those little bars at the top of your cases. And if that errors trying to get that because it doesn't exist, then it's going to go looking for the topmost G object that's typed text, which is the comments. And it'll just return those texts. So that's how it works with either of those. It pushes them back out. We've got the ability to filter, which we'll get into in a minute. This cannot create an error out. If anything goes wrong, you just won't get any help on that, which is much better than posting some weird error for a help message. All right. And then I mentioned that this could also be done as an enum. It looks very similar. In this case, we have our enum, which I don't know what all it has in there. A whole bunch of stuff. I just tossed things in there which sound good. It has the same get messages and get help. That has the same code. It works the same way. And yes, it works with enums. Hey, look, we have our messages and we can get help. Now this is handy for development, because if I decide to add or remove messages, this will automatically update because it's using VI scripting. Do more stuff. I guess I could leave the comment off to show you what it does when it doesn't find a comment. But if we run this, we get messages, and now we have our new message wherever that went, message 3, right in between 1 and 2. Perfect. So as you're developing your code, whenever it runs this, it will automatically update all of its information. And because it uses VI scripting, it's going to be live. Whenever you run it, it'll be whatever your code is. The other thing is that when we're getting help, we have this help.ini file. So whenever you ask for help, it will save that into a file, creating it if it doesn't exist. So this is where all of your comments will go. And it uses that file not during development, but after you deploy. Because after you deploy, the VI scripting stuff stops working, and this makes sure that you can still offer help automatically to the user after you deploy it. Let's see. So having these out here in case structures is handy for showing you guys stuff, but if this was really the architecture I was planning to work with, I wouldn't want to put these get help and get messages in every single agent. I call them agents because that's how I speak. It's, you know, actors or whatever you choose to use. So what you really want to do is build these into your architecture, and the best place to do that is in your dequeuer. So these dequeuers right now are just a wrapper for a dequeue. There's really nothing else in there. It's a dequeue. That's all it does. But as soon as we want to add these messages to our framework in a way so that it's used by all of our agents, we have to put it someplace that's part of that library, and that would be in the dequeuer. So we want to move this. No, don't save. Oh yeah, I added a message. We want to integrate that into our architecture. It looks something like this. So this guy doesn't have a get help or get messages. But what it does have is something in the dequeuer which does that. So now when I drop this dequeuer down, because it's part of my architecture, it already knows the get messages and the get help messages. So it doesn't need to, you don't need to code it into all your stuff. And anything that it doesn't know, it just passes through. That's going to be something that's specific to that agent. And it looks exactly the same. When we run it, get messages. Now this is coming through as just like a console, a message window. But it does the same thing as the other ones did. Any questions so far? We're a lively bunch today.
I haven't buried you. I was not prepared.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we have a microphone here. One moment, please. Well, yeah, so the people online can hear you.
I was wondering when when you're adding this, how much more does this add to the code, to the size of the code that you're running, or does it not?
Well,
Is
these are all the sub-VIs that you see on the screen here.
Mhm.
And they're
I can't read
50
that.
kilobytes ish. There's not much there.
Okay.
It's pretty small.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't add a whole lot. The VI scripting nodes are pretty efficient. They're just going to go in and find the case structure that's connected to your DQer. So you have to teach this how to find your DQer, and I'll be touching that on that again. But essentially you're saying, this is how many terminals my DQer has, and this nth terminal of the DQer has to be connected to a case structure. And then additionally, you'll see later that you can then say, well, let's look at all those cases and see if they actually look like messages. And we can say, well, this one looks sort of like messages. I'll give it a 60%. And oh, this one's definitely messages. I'll rank that at 90%. And you can look at every single VI that's connected to a case structure and rank them all, and then return the one that you think is most likely to be your messages. And that's how it's done in Aloha, which I'll be showing you here in a minute. Oh, we'll just go straight to the VI. So this is something that's built in Aloha. It's a framework that I've used for a long time, and it does implement this get messages and the help messages. In this case, I've just sort of grabbed a bunch of agents and tossed them on there because I thought they would look cool. It doesn't really matter. We just need a bunch of stuff to show up. And the interface to this is with the messages, get messages query or the get help query. And I can ask that of any of my loaded agents. So in this case, I've got all these guys here. So if I were to say, ask the top level agent, copy, say, well, what messages do you have? I use all messages or MSGS, I can't remember. Yes, yes. Let's see what that says. It says, I understand these messages. It's UPS battery low. Oh, it's giving me a UPS response. That's handy. Oh yeah, it is. It actually does respond to those messages. System shutdown, the manual GUI version query, and the CRC query. So if I were to ask for the version, this is where I can ask for help on. Oh, let me ask for help first. Help, question mark. That's going to tell me these are all the messages I understand, and then I can give it a parameter for, hey, I want help on this particular message. I have one space there, okay. And it says, oh, returns the version number of the application. So this is happening from the source code. It's digging the source code every time I ask it. Coincidentally, I think this one's blank. Thank you.
Figure out the interface to those agents like this.
Yes, so that interface is defined by the architecture itself, by this framework. So
I'm not calling them while they're actively running. You're just looking into the source code directly to figure out whether they reply to that message.
that's correct. So, oh, the question was, does this look into the source code to give you the answer for when you ask it a query? And the answer is yes. While you're in development, it does look into the source code. And I can show you that because I just asked it what the CRC query does, and it says there's no help available for the specified message or the message wasn't found. And that's because the CRC doesn't actually have anything on it yet. So I'm going to add that. So here's the top comment for the version, and there's a CRC. It has no comment, so it didn't know what to return for the help query. It's like, I don't know, there's nothing there. So returns CRC of can't spell of the application.
So instead of building in a responder into running the well, as far as answer the question.
Well,
which commands do support?
it does. So this saves that information to a file. So that's building that for when you deploy, and that file becomes the responder. Because it can't use VI scripting when it's deployed to look into the code.
I mean, build in it's extra code, of course, build in the responder into every single agent, right? So that it could respond with the list of the commands that support.
Yeah, so I'll show you that. I only had to build it into one place because rather than putting in the case structure, I put it into the dequeuer. And now we can do the CRC query, and it returns exactly what I typed in there. So it's just building that up as we go. If I went to go look at the file that stores that, it would now have that new information. And, well, what can I do with this? Now we've got something that I can dynamically use while I'm coding to find out, well, if I've got a bunch of agents loaded and I'm like, well, I don't remember what the heck that thing responded to, I can just ask it, for help. Or if I don't remember what that message did, I can ask about help on that message. But we can do some other stuff with this now that we've got that working. And what I decided to do was have it create or try to create a user's manual. So how do I have it make a user's manual for the software? Well, I made an agent for that because everything is an agent. And I need to turn that agent on. What did I name it? It is. Okay, load true. So this is the Aloha Automated Software Users Manual, or awesome. I just turned it on, so let's run it. Hopefully it'll load on this screen and not somewhere out in outer space. Oh, good, there it is. So I'm just going to tell it to create a user's manual. This is going to use the NI library that documents VIs, which is designed to work with Word documents. And what you're seeing here is it's looking at each of these agents, popping them out, getting images of the front panels, getting images of all of the controls and indicators. If it's a Boolean, it'll switch the indicator appearance so that it can get a screen capture of both conditions. And it's shoving all this stuff into a document based on this guy's ini file. So this will disappear as soon as it's done being updated. There it is, I think. Yeah, okay. So open. You can go away. So this just built me a 60 some odd page user's manual. I'll go over those in a minute. Does your table of contents, goes through all the different agents, talks about help, gives you some, just starts out. So this I'm calling it the manual GUI, and here's our images. Some of this is coming from files because it's all driven by the ini file, which I guess I should open and show. So at the bottom of this, we have a whole big wall of text that's a big comment that tells you how it all works. And then you've seen these as they go by. It's like just text that you can put in here. So if I change this text to say something else, it'll pick that part of the document and it'll put that text in there. If I didn't want to put text, I could also just point it to a document and it will put that document in this document. It works with .doc and .docx. And all this does is automatically build that file for you. This is all coming out of the existing one. This is its auto-generated image of the front panel. This is all from documentation that you fill out for your controls and indicators. So if you actually put documentation in there, it will put it in here. If you have a tooltip, it will optionally put that in here too. You can turn that off, but like this one, hover your mouse for a tooltip that says it's manual GUI CRC. And all of these will show up. All the different agents are in here. I didn't separate them into verification or support or whatever. They all just sort of fall in here. But these are all the agents that are in here and all the controls and indicators with all of their documentation all jammed into this one big, huge Word doc. Now, granted, some of these are going to give you some screenshots of Boolean indicators in positions that you don't want to give to the user because it doesn't look good in the document. So maybe you'll just say, oh, I'll delete that image or whatever. So it doesn't know exactly how you want the document to look, but it gives you a lot of stuff and pushes it all in here. It also gives you all the messages. So here's all the messages that we're building on from our message list and the help that we put in there. And hopefully, unless we didn't put help, in which case it just does that. And that's one of the first things I noticed is that when I built this and ran it on code that I already had, it found all the places that I did not document. And yeah, thanks. But, you know, okay, yes, I need to go put that stuff in there. But once you do put that stuff in there, then the next time you run it, it's just a click of a button and it's all there. And if you want to change anything, it's pretty minor. So this has saved me a lot of time. And then this is where we leave the realm of I've used this tool and it works because I have. And we start entering the realm of, well, where do we go from here? What else can we do with that? And so what I decided is that I really want it to be able to give me a requirements document. And usually that's because a client will call us and have a poor idea of what they really want the software to do. And if they provide requirements, they're not really good requirements, but usually they don't give us requirements at all. But then they still require us to create a requirements document for them. They're like, oh yeah, that's a deliverable. You got to give us that. I'm like, okay, well, okay. How do I make my framework give me that information? So because I'm providing the requirements document after the software is already created, and it's sort of the back assword way of doing it, I've made myself an assword agent. This is the Aloha semi-automated software requirements document. And truth in advertising. So let me make that load. How can I spell true? All right. And let's shut you down.
Don't feed it any word of mouth that you have collected. Well, actually, figure out what the hell they want.
A lot of times we have to figure out what the requirements are because the
I
client,
understand, but you don't document it in a formal way while doing that, but you do it post-factum after implementation.
if they've come by at the end of the program and said, this is a deliverable,
So
then the software already works.
they document database.
They wouldn't have even known that they needed one until the end of the program. And then suddenly they say, oh yeah, actually, we want you to deliver that. And now we're in this position where we've already got software that works and they want a requirements document. Okay, I have an agent for you. So this agent builds upon what we've already done with the messages and the help and the automated user's manual. And it knows whether something is a command or a query automatically or a controller and indicator. And it tries to create, has a couple of algorithms associated with those, and it tries to create a requirement that looks like it would match what it is that that controller, indicator, or message is supposed to do. And like this says, the something or other agent shall provide an indicator which displays, and then this indicates the build version of the manual GUI application. Well, okay, it's not quite worded right, but you know, it gets me pretty close. I can click through each of these and it will give me its understanding of what that requirement would be. Puts them on the list. I can save them to a file. I don't know if I already have or not, but I'm just going to do it anyways. We can reload the file into this agent and continue messing with stuff. We can lock things that we think are good and we don't want them to be messed with anymore. We can skip those and all that kind of stuff. So this is all pretty much working, actually. I'm happy with it. It's not quite ready for prime time, but it gets pretty close. It's got a lot of configurability built into it. It's a pretty decent tool. This, however, has not yet been used on any program, so it's still in development. But I like it. And then, well, you know, we're making an automated requirements document. Why don't we have an automated verification test? Hey, that's a great idea. So I made an agent for that. This one is the, what did I call that one? The automated verification and test automation report. I don't know what the hell I called it. But Avatar sounded like a great name, so that's what I called it. This one is, again, still in development. But we're building on this because we've stuck with this framework long enough to be able to add little bits and pieces and build upon those and build more and start creating tools. And that only works if you can stick with an architecture. Save. Run. And now all of these are loading. So this looks very similar. Oh, you're still loading. I'll give it a minute. One of these is Avatar, the other one's AssWord, but they both look very similar and they both work in very similar ways. This one's taking the file that this agent created and using it to try and figure out how to word a test to test that requirement. This one doesn't work nearly as well, but it will. And then I'll have something that will create a script for me, which I can run using, again, an agent. Where's my scripter? Oh, well, my scripter might not have loaded. Anyway, I have a scripter agent that this creates a script for. That's perfect. It only happens when you're giving a demo, right? That's when the thing doesn't work. So there we go. This is the end of my my talk. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you for listening. And if you stick with the framework, you can develop some cool tools like this. And oh, hey, that's where that went. And yeah, it's really beneficial to have a framework that you're sticking with. Let me go back to my PowerPoint and see where I'm at. I think I'm ahead by like 6 frames. Yeah, I stuck with Aloha. But as you can see, you can use this with a lot of different frameworks. Oh yeah, had some interesting ones. Like, anybody have any ideas of what else you can gain by sticking with an architecture? I mean, everybody does. It seems like everybody in this room has some architecture they stick with. What do you lose? Well, I can think that everything sort of looks like a nail. If you've got this architecture or these few architectures and somebody feeds you a problem, you're going to try and pick the architecture that fits that problem. And if you just rebuild a new architecture every time, you're not limited and you may actually need to create yourself a screwdriver instead of a hammer. But if you stick with an architecture, you kind of tend to use those and try and fit it to your problem. Yeah, if you've got multiple architectures and you create some cool tools for them, you may find that they're difficult to move between architectures because they're so customized just for that architecture. I'm not sure that that's a detriment, but anyway. And hey, I can zoom LabVIEW, which I'm really happy with, except that when my wires go like all kinds of weird places. And is that it? Yes. Thank you very much. All of the code that I've demoed is on a thumb drive right over there. You're all welcome to grab one of those. And thank you for listening to my ramblings. Please grab a thumb drive.